So going back to the original argument, like what Patanjali said, that if you cannot purify your thoughts, if you cannot suppress the negative and uphold the positive, if you cannot purify the thoughts, whatever else you are, but guess what? You are not civilized. Forget about 7th century Arabia, okay? A bunch of illiterate calling themselves prophet. They did whatever they did. Now look at the so-called scientific exploration. You got all the nuclear weapons just sitting around the world, just for the button to be pushed. Were the Indian philosophers wrong? Like, you can say whatever you want to say, that whether you need caste system, whether you need yoga, like arousing that kundalini, whatever you need. But my point is, the point that I'm hammering, the point that I'm emphasizing so much, that without this in place, that if you cannot suppress those negative tendencies like good and bad, this is you. It's not someone else, not Christ and Antichrist, that are two separate beings sitting up in the cloud. That's definitely not the case. That's definitely not the case. Good and evil, this is you. This is everything. All the beings that you are seeing, it definitely has a good and definitely has an evil. So if you cannot implement this process of suppressing the negative and uplifting the positive, how are you civilized then? Okay. And is democracy is the way to achieve it? Like, one of the very paradoxical ideas that I happen to come across is the notion of equality. What is collectivism? Collectivism is nothing but equality. What is life? Life is about this individualism. Life is about inequality. So when you force equality, you are going against life. You are going against this individualism. And now, let's shift our focus to democracy. Like at the very beginning of this video, we talked about individualism. We talked about appreciating differences. We talked about appreciating variety. That what is civilization? Civilization is nothing but appreciation of this variety, appreciation of this individualism. In any form, if collectivism comes, that society is doomed to fail. Take, for instance, the case of democracy. Again, we will talk about democracy in much more details in broader context on a separate episode, okay? But I am just giving you these ideas so that you can make this connection. Like, there is this ruling party and there is this opposition party. What does it mean? It means divide and conquer. When you create a division, when you fail to establish this individualism, you end up with collectivism. You are forcing equality. Like when equality comes in any form, what is life? Once again, life is about change. Life is about this discrimination, this variety. So if equality comes in any form, in case of democracy, you have the ruling party and the opposition party. Once again, you are falling into the trap of collectivism. So I don't think that democracy can be the solution for civilization. A civilization must uphold individualism. That's how I see it. So I think this is going to happen very soon because of these ideas, because of this democracy and all this nonsense. Millions of people, like, it's not a question of why, it's a question of when. Because of democracy, there will be a bloodshed, and guess what? It's not going to be a world war. Or at least that's what I hope. It's not going to be like somebody blowing up a, nuclear warhead and destroying the planet. That's probably not gonna happen. But rest assured that there is a civil war, street fight. People will kill each other. Is coming, is very soon. It may not happen in, it is actually happening in some parts of the world. Now you got Bangladesh, for instance. What is happening in Bangladesh? You had the Israel-Palestine issue just over a year ago. Now it is happening in Bangladesh. So civil war could be on a limited scale, but it is happening nonetheless. And guess what? It is just going to get started. Because of these ideas, when you have a disease, what do? You have a disease, you need to cure the disease. You shouldn't be allowing it to spread all over your body. That's exactly what democracy does. It brings the good and bad equal, good and bad on the same level. What is civilization? Civilization is to suppress this negative and uplift the positive. And what does democracy do? Just the exact opposite. It gives equality to everyone and everything. Whether it's a bad idea or a good idea, fair enough, is all equal. Not only that you will face the consequences of these plagiarized ideas from the Indian philosophers via the Greeks and now spreading all over the world. Not only that the world will pay a huge price because of this plagiarism, but the question is how much bloodshed will have to happen. How much bloodshed will have to happen before people realizes that there was a civilization existed in the past which has been destroyed by mostly the Abrahamic, especially the destruction of all the libraries, burning of the libraries, the nomads, the Muslim that came in. Not only they slaughtered hundreds of millions of people, but guess what else they did? They burned down all our libraries. The knowledge center of the world have been destroyed. In the last 1,000 years or so, what has been done to humanity by these people, these so-called prophets of Arabia? Compared to what the Indian philosophers just achieved some 10,000 years ago, my worst fear is this, that not only this so-called democracy, not only that there will be a bloodshed, like I'm talking about billions of people, hundreds of millions at the very least. What we have seen over the last couple of months is just getting started. You just recently, there was an incident happening in Amsterdam. It's just getting started. All of these things, do you think that these things will go down without any trouble, without any dramas? I mean, really. I hope so, with my best intentions. I'm not hoping that there will be something, but as history tells us, there will be a lot of things. History repeats itself, and it will repeat in a very ugly way this time. And it will happen because of democracy, because of this cultural communism, because of this equality. Equality and freedom, they do not work side by side. You can choose one, but not both. Whatever message that you take, like I gave you a couple of examples here. We talked about caste system a little bit, like we'll talk a lot about caste system. At least my understanding of the caste system, that why it was necessary or why it will be necessary. We talked about caste system, we talked about yoga, and of course, message of Krishna, war. So one of the foundational principles of Hinduism is this discrimination. What is the underlying, like what is the thread that, that ties all of these ideas? Discrimination. Caste system, one of the legs, one of the foundational legs, that the chair that I'm sitting down, it has 4 legs, yes? If you take out one of the legs, what's gonna happen? This chair will fall down. It's not gonna stay like this. It will fall down. Not only what happened to humanity in the last several thousand years, but guess what? What will happen to humanity now that we have democracy? We have equality. What is democracy? Democracy is about equality. Now that we have equality, what will happen to humanity? If something has happened in the past, you could refer to that particular event in history. Let's say, for instance, communism. We know that at least 100 million people have been slaughtered because of communism. But what is the outcome of religious bigotry? We still don't know. Because to solve a problem, you have to recognize the problem first, isn't it? You have to understand that, oh look, there is a problem. Without recognition of that problem, how you want to solve it? Again, going back to the prophets of Arabia, all these Joshuas, these Davids, these perfect human, all these, again, to put it bluntly, who are these people? These are when this scripture fell into the hands of in the name of religion, they did it in the name of religion, isn't it? It's not that I'm trying to make it up. They did it in the name of religion. All the conquests that came out of the Middle East, they did it in the name of religion, in the name of pleasing the God. First of all, they didn't understand what the notion of God is. It's not polytheism that there are 33 million gods and goddesses that the so-called enlightened people couldn't even understand. It's one God. It's manifested in hundreds of millions of different forms. Krishna gave Arjuna divine vision that, behold, my hundreds and thousands of wonderful forms. They didn't understand, and in the name of God, not only that they didn't understand, but they did the worst bloodshed that humanity has ever seen. Like this religious fanaticism, that what is the cost, that what is the death toll? We don't even have an estimate as of today. We don't even have an estimate as I speak. Bring your scientists, bring all the Western enlightened philosophers. Let's see if they can give us an estimate. You guys lecture about humanity, you guys lecture about, oh, we gave everything, the liberalism and all this nonsense. Why don't you ask your philosophers, these so-called philosophers, okay, what is the death toll of the Abrahamic savagery and barbarism? Why don't you ask that? Why don't you ask your so-called scientists to give you an estimate? The people are so up in their arms talking about superstition, talking about, oh, India is these people are a bunch of superstitious people. Why don't you ask your scientists to give you an estimate of the death toll that is going to happen? Again, it's not a question of why, it's a question of when. Can they give us an estimate? Why don't you go and ask them? You people even haven't got the basic understanding that, okay, look, civilization is to suppress this negative and to uplift the positive. That definition hasn't yet been finalized, let alone divine vision. Krishna, Bhagavad Gita is talking about divine vision. The most foundational principle hasn't yet been understood, hasn't yet been grasped, let alone highest of the philosophy, the Advaita philosophy, philosophy of oneness. Polytheism. What is polytheism? According to the enlightened people, the chosen people, oh, there are, everything is a god. So how can a cow be a god? How can a dog be a god? They are mocking, they are doing their thing. That's how from polytheism they brought monotheism. They needed one god. Muslims brought the message of Allah and then destroyed, like fanaticism. What is monotheism? I have a video about monotheism as well, by the way. Fanaticism. 7 problems of monotheism that I discussed in that video. Again, I will put all of these videos in the description. So they brought fanaticism in the name of religion. In the name of religion, what these chosen people, these enlightened people had brought to the humanity: death and destruction, degeneration, fanaticism. Now, if you want to talk about equality, why don't you talk about the equality of a cat and a dog and a human being? Are they equal? Of course not. Why not? They are all life. Because our prophet said so. That's your response. A cat and a dog and a human being are not equal because our prophet said so. So what did the prophet say? The prophet said only the believers are equal. So what about the unbelievers? Well, they are the worst of all creatures. You see the problem, the fault lines of these nonsensical ideas. When you are talking about equality, you are hopping, you are jumping from one nonsensical idea to another. Whether it is the equality of the believers, fanaticism, monotheism, or the equality of the cultures, democracy, or the equality of the wealth, communism, financial equality. What is the underlying principle behind all of these nonsensical ideas? The notion of equality. And guess what? They are all flawed. They are all nonsensical. They are all fanatical. So when Swami Vivekananda said that equality is fanaticism, this is what Swami Vivekananda said. Was he actually wrong? Why did you needed equality? You wanted to unite people. Or at least the Muslims are not hiding it at all. They said they united Arabia through Islam. Okay. And also this is the same case in case of democracy. Why the political correctness was born? Because you wanted to reduce conflict in the society. You wanted to unite people. That was the intent. Not only you failed to achieve that objective, but what else you did? You brought fanaticism into the society. You brought fanaticism into the society with your nonsensical idea of equality. Have you not? Look, if we cannot get this sorted out, if we are not on the same page on this idea, the idea of inequality, discrimination is inequality, isn't it? If we cannot come on the same page on this particular idea, there is no going forward. There is no going forward. This idea has to be understood, and this idea have been given by the Indian philosophers some 10,000 years ago. And to be specific, it was coined by Patanjali. Idea of inequality, idea of discrimination. However way you want to implement it, whether it's caste system was, I'm not going to point my finger, because guess what? I'm not a theologist. I don't have a degree in Hinduism. I'm not studying Hinduism for ages. Most of the things that I'm telling you, this came out of Swami Vivekananda. If you want to learn Hinduism, you have to, if you want to talk about philosophy, if there is one philosopher, if there is one, whom should I choose? Hands down, Vivekananda. So look, my understanding is that when it comes to human psychology, the Indian philosophers, what they understood, how they looked at the world, you guys should take a lesson from them. Instead of being self-righteous, instead of lecturing about civilization and enlightenment and chosen people and all those nonsense, democracy and equality and all this nonsense, you should look at the world with their lens, or at least try to understand a different perspective, how they looked at the world. I think it is going to solve a lot of problem. If you at the very least, if you're open about those suggestions. Righty? So what is the hallmark of civilization? The hallmark of civilization is inequality, not equality. Like we talked about caste system, that what happens to humanity if the scripture is given to the wrong people. People who are not purified. We are talking about purification of the thought. If your thoughts are not purified, if you cannot go back to yoga, right? We talked about in the last episode about the Kundalini, that you can arouse this energy. These Kundalini can be aroused, and as it is aroused and comes up to the head, the 1,000-petaled lotus, that's when you become a Rajyogi, you become free. But the foundation, the fundamental, like we talked about a couple of these ideas. You look at Bhagavad Gita, the Battle of Kurukshetra. How do you uphold civilization? You have to take up the arms and fight to destroy the evil. Caste system. The scripture knowledge shouldn't be given to everyone. Or yoga, arousing of this, the good energy. Like what is the underlying principle behind all of these ideas? Inequality. Caste system, the idea of inequality. Yoga, good versus evil, that is within you. And then of course Krishna's message, taking up the arms and fight to destroy the evil. Even if you are weak in numbers, even if you are small in numbers, again, it's all about inequality. The underlying philosophy behind all of these ideas, inequality. Inequality is the hallmark of civilization. You look at nature, where have you seen equality in nature? There is no equality that exists in nature. But now you are telling me, in the name of democracy, like democracy is coming out of this Judeo-Christian philosophy. Man is created in the image of God. Where this equality is coming from? It's coming from there. Universal brotherhood. You have believers, unbelievers. They are all equal. These are all linked. Like you cannot separate these ideas. Believers are all equal. How come believers are all equal? We will talk about like the problems of Christianity in a separate episode. Again, all of these things, there are so many ideas that are absolutely wrong, that are fundamentally so utterly flawed. So the hallmark of civilization is inequality. And who gave the world this civilization? Like how do you uphold civilization? Who showed humanity the example? Krishna. John Locke or Voltaire, these are like, if I have to borrow the words of Swami Vivekananda, what did Vivekananda said? Baby's talk. Western philosophy is baby's talk. That's what Western philosophy is. As the different streams having their sources in different places, all mingle their water into the sea. O Lord, different paths that men take through different tendencies, various though they appear crooked or straight, all lead to thee. These are all God's path. These are not superstition. People are saying these so-called enlightened people, chosen people, they brought fanaticism, not civilization. Civilization is this unification, this Krishna's divine vision. That's what civilization is, and the hallmark of civilization is inequality, not equality.